All right. We'll start this off with the third step prayer, guys. Rob, if you'll help us.
It would be my pleasure. Rob Kay, recovered alcoholic. We're on page 63 of the big book for the third step prayer. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, and I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. So today we are on page 115, but I am going to ask Rob to back up to page 114 near the bottom, where it starts out, if your husband is a drinker.
You got it, Leo. Page 114, everybody, right at the bottom. If your husband is a drinker, you probably worry what other people are thinking, and you hate to meet your friends. You draw more and more into yourself, and you think everyone is talking about conditions at your home. You avoid the subject of drinking, even with your own parents. You do not know what to tell the children. When your husband is bad, you become a trembling recluse, wishing the telephone had never been invented.
Yeah. So we're in that phase or that point or that time where we're painfully aware of the problems that are being produced and created because of the alcoholic in the family. And not only that, but you've been subject to some embarrassing moments. Maybe they thought that the alcoholic in the family was being cute or funny, or at least that's what they were thinking, but instead they were slurring, slobbering, staggering type of moments, and people, were quiet. It created those awkward pauses, and then you typically have somebody that steps in, puts their arm around the alcoholic and says, hey, why don't we go outside, or why don't we sit down, why don't we go for a walk, something like that. How about if I help you do this, and that type of thing. And you just know that people are talking behind your back, and typically they've realized it before the awkward moment. They haven't said anything, and most people don't know what to say. And so here you are in a situation where you're now starting to withdraw from your social life, the times that you have with friends and family. You actually contemplate what you might say to people about the situations, certainly trying to avoid it, but when you get confronted with it in some manner or fashion, obviously you're going to want to try to reason out of it, which there is no reason. You may try and lie about certain things, but nonetheless, it creates a situation where now there's this overwhelming isolation, which is not good for anybody. This is a point in time where I think that the spouse, the other half of the relationship, is really in a quandary. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle the alcoholic, but they also are at odds with what to do and say with others. And there's a certain amount of trying to protect the loved one, that's the alcoholic, but also trying to protect yourself, because after all, people are going to be talking, and you're going to kind of get in a situation where you may exaggerate what people are thinking and saying and talking about. And then again, maybe you're not. But nonetheless, this is one of those times where it is very, very difficult for the family as a whole. And it's confusing. It's awkward. I've used that word already. Incredibly awkward and uncomfortable. So this is a very vulnerable time. That withdrawal from your social kind of life and everything is also full of kind of that remorse and the regret and the loneliness that comes with it. A lot of loneliness, and there doesn't seem to be a way out at this point. Not that this book isn't a big help, but that's kind of where we're going. So just kind of setting the stage for where we are. All right, Rob.
Page 115, everybody. We find that most of this embarrassment is unnecessary. While you need not discuss your husband at length, you can quietly let your friends know the nature of his illness, but you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. When you have careful, go on.
No, it's all right. I was just going to say that this is really the healthy kind of approach to it. That honesty, like that saying, honesty is the best medicine. I think that people already know, so acknowledging it from the standpoint that you also know, and that you are working towards hopefully a solution. Maybe it's the program in AA, et cetera, et cetera. But nonetheless, I can tell you that in the beginning of my situation, there was this quietness, this not saying anything. But as soon as I got comfortable with being open and honest about my problem, my alcoholism, and it opened the door for my wife, for example, to be able to talk freely to others about my alcoholism. I mean, even now, in conversations that she's having with people that I don't know, she may bring me up as an example, and they may be struggling with something, and she'll just kind of write up and say, you know, we've got experience with that. My husband is an alcoholic, et cetera, et cetera. Doesn't even faze me. And I think it's a liberating kind of thing for her to be able to talk openly and freely about it. So there is a freeing kind of emotion that happens when you actually address it head on and talk about it honestly. So just to kind of put that out there. Rob.
I love how Bill, you know, he mentions a problem, and then in the next paragraph, he tells us how to deal with it, you know, because it's the pride, you know, the woman's pride is hurt because she's embarrassed about her husband. But what, you know, here Bill gives us what she should do. You know, well, you need not discuss your husband at length. You can quietly let your friend know the nature of his illness. And here's a must. But you must be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. You know, not only does Bill tell us how you're feeling, but gives us a solution for it. You know, it's beautifully put. When you have carefully explained to such people that he is a sick person, you will have created a new atmosphere. Barriers which have sprung up between you and your friends will disappear with the growth of sympathetic understanding. You will no longer be self-conscious or feel that you must apologize as though your husband were a weak character. He may be anything but that. Your new courage, good nature, and lack of self-consciousness will do wonders for you socially.
Sure. And you know what else? It also gives the opposite, the other people, the freedom to talk to you about it. And that is also a liberating thing for everyone. The awkwardness, like I said, goes away. And certainly it's one of those times where now people are open and honest. They don't have to talk about it quite so much because it's out there in the open. Everybody knows it. So I think that there is also good for the folks that are the extended family, the friends, et cetera, for them to be able to know that you're being open and honest about it. They understand it better. And with all of that, then it kind of gets laid to rest in the sense that they don't have to keep being awkward about it. There's so much energy spent on that awkwardness. And I'm sure that we all realize and recognize that feeling. But again, I go back to that liberating, kind of freeing kind of feeling that you get when you actually are able to meet this head on. The other thing I want to bring up is that you might find that, much like my wife uses my alcoholism as a resource for others, and that is that somebody may say, as a matter of fact, I've been through this, and this is what I experienced, and this is how I dealt with, or whatever, which can also help the family themselves. You may actually find a sponsor that's willing to sit down with the alcoholic member of the family and work through some things. So there are some extended benefits that I think are out there for being that open and honest about the situation, which everybody already knows. All you're doing is acknowledging it, and I think that's an important piece there. Rob?
Yeah, you'd be surprised at how many people have alcoholic aunts, uncles, parents, they have experience in this field, and you find out that, you know what, you're not alone. Other people deal with these things all the time. The same principle applies in dealing with the children. Unless they actually need protection from their father, it is best not to take sides in any argument he has with them while drinking. Use your energies to promote a better understanding all around. Then that terrible tension which grips the home of every problem drinker will be lessened.
Yeah, so we're going to kind of move along to the children. Now, the thing about children is that it depends on the age where they are in their lives as to how you're going to deal with this particular situation. The younger they are, I believe the more difficult it is, in a sense, to be able to talk about it in a way that they understand and can grasp. I'm not saying it's necessarily hard to describe. I'm saying it's kind of hard to kind of do a relation. What is this? Because they're more idealistic about things, and it's probably a little bit more difficult for them to see the reality of life and the trials and tribulations that come with alcoholism. And it's kind of an advanced negative kind of emotion that is experienced, and so it's a difficult thing to get to relate to them. And gold star to the person that's able to reach a young child and be able to kind of reason with them and get them to understand a little bit better. So there's some art and technique to that. Obviously, the older the kids are, then you're also dealing with their own budding mature emotions. There is a definite situation for them where some resentment might be brought in to the situation, and it's going to be one that you can talk to at a more adult level. They're going to grasp that in such a way that I think that they're going to understand it much easier, but their acceptance of it may or may not be easier. And I think that that's a distinction there for the older child as far as that goes. And, they've got their own friends that, everybody that's had, young teenagers is, super impressionable, and they want to be cool, they want to be accepted and that type of thing. But if they've got to deal with the fact that they're afraid to bring their friends over, or they did bring their friends over and they all experienced, the alcoholic at their worst, man, what an embarrassing thing for them. And kids are brutal these days with regard to the way that they talk about things and stuff like that. So there's challenges all around, but I think that this is incredibly important. Well, you're going to have to be super sensitive no matter how you deal with it. Rob?
Oh, the paragraph before, we dealt with friends. Then now we just finished dealing with children. Now we're going to deal with the employer. Frequently, you have felt obliged to tell your husband's employer and his friends that he was sick, when as a matter of fact, he was tight. Avoid answering these inquiries as much as you can. Whenever possible, let your husband explain. Your desire to protect him should not cause you to lie to people when they have a right to know where he is and what he is doing. Discuss this with him when he is sober and in good spirits. Ask him what you should do if he places you in such a position again, but be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so.
Yeah. So employers, certainly there is a lot at stake with that. If the employer is an understanding, very collaborative, type of employer, it's probably an easier task at explaining things. And absolutely, it should be the person that's employed, that is the alcoholic, that should be doing the explaining, and not the spouse, the other person, and everything. Now, if it's an understanding or not understanding employer, if there's some, strictness, some disciplines, and some, well, so as an example, maybe they've been, the alcoholic has been late habitually for the last 3 to 6 months, and it's, you know, they've been on report and that type of thing. You know, there is the chance that this alcoholic could lose their job. So this is really getting into, you know, the impact that that would have on an entire family, and then the extension from that to, you know, the creditors and that type of thing. So I think it's best to try and take advantage these days that there is the resources that most employers provide to their employees with regard to sickness, illness, and things like that. So coming at it from that standpoint, it makes it, you know, all you're doing is utilizing the resources that have been provided and are available to you. Hopefully that's the case for most people. If it's not, it is just an incredibly sensitive situation. I think it is one that is, you know, that you need to be able to talk to the alcoholic. And, you know, it says when they're sober and in good spirits, when they're sober, period, whether they're in good spirits or not. I think it's an important thing because this is really, there's a lot at stake. There's a lot riding on employment and having a revenue stream that keeps people up and on their feet and stuff. So we're maneuvering through some of the nuances of how to deal with people that are, you know, affected by the alcoholic, whether that be friends, children, employers, etc. This is where you're going to have a conditional kind of situation. It depends. It's going to be one of those kind of things. You're not going to have the easy answer to do X, Y, or Z. You're really going to have to sit down and analyze what is going on, where it's having an impact, and what it needs to be said or done in order to address it in an honest and open manner, so that you know, that part can be dealt with properly. I can't emphasize enough that just because I say one thing, there's probably a dozen other scenarios and situations that apply, and there's no way we can cover all of them. So it is really a big thing here with it depends. But I think the important message that we're trying to get across at this point with Bill and the program is that you have a resource here to be able to understand that you have the freedom to do what you feel is best in that situation under these conditions. And what they're doing in this book is giving you permission to do that, and the good reasons why you have permission to do it. So it's an important part, I think, that to bring up in this. Rob?
And now we're going to go to hard times. There is another paralyzing fear. You may be afraid your husband will lose his position. You are thinking of the disgrace and hard times which will befall you and the children. This experience may come to you, or you may already have had it several times. Should it happen again, regard it in a different light. Maybe it will prove a blessing. It may convince your husband he wants to stop drinking forever. And now you know that he can stop if he will. Time after time, this apparent calamity has been a boon to us, for it has opened up a path which led to the discovery of God.
Yeah, and what they're basically saying is that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, back on page 25, as a reference to this paragraph, it's there is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching and leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings which the process requires for its successful consummation, and so on. So there is a solution, and maybe it's at that point that the alcoholic is at their rock bottom, and it can be dealt with in such a way that they are finally ready to go down that path, to go down a program of recovery. So I think that's an important distinction here to kind of grasp. And you're right. There is the negative, the ugly, the dark side of an alcoholic, and their, by extension, what the impact is having on the family, but it also what it's having on friends and the employers, etc. So, you know, that there maybe the alcoholic has hit rock bottom when they finally realize the impact of their drinking and what it's going to do to the family. Rob?
We have elsewhere remarked how much better life is when lived on a spiritual plane. If God can solve the age-old riddle of alcoholism, he can solve your problems too. We wives found that, like everybody else, we were afflicted with pride, self-pity, vanity, and all the things which go to make up the self-centered person. And we were not above selfishness or dishonesty. As our husbands began to apply spiritual principles in their lives, we began to see the desirability of doing so too.
So that is just kind of like, a good behavior rubbing off on another, and them accepting the fact that this process and this program that the alcoholic is going through can benefit the rest of the family. So it's a pretty easy message. It's pretty, by extension, it's an easy thing to grasp, but it's a difficult thing to implement. And I think it takes a special person to be able to see through all of the pride, self-pity, and vanity, and actually apply some of this to their own lives as they're going forward and working with the alcoholic. Rob?
At first, some of us did not believe we needed this help. We thought on the whole, we were pretty good women, capable of being nicer if our husbands stopped drinking. But it was a silly idea that we were too good to need God. Now we try to put spiritual principles to work in every department of our lives. When we do that, we find it solves our problems too. The ensuing lack of fear, worry, and hurt feelings is a wonderful thing. We urge you to try our program, for nothing would be so helpful to your husband as to radically change attitude towards him, which God will show you how to have. Go along with your husband if you possibly can.
So that's basically what we had just said and talked about. It's the atmosphere. If everybody is subscribing to the same program and applying it to their own lives in the way that it's naturally going to need to be applied, well, it can't help but benefit the alcoholic, because everybody else is going through something similar and applying these principles to their own lives. So by doing so, now the alcoholic isn't like, I'm doing this alone, I'm doing this by myself. And, you shouldn't, or you should be, kind of going along with it. And everybody else is kind of ignorant to what's going on. Now we've got people that are actually in the book together. And can you just imagine the power that imparts on an entire family unit? If in fact everybody is applying the same principles and going through this, I can't imagine an alcoholic, the chances of failing is greatly reduced, like exponentially reduced, by the fact that you've got the entire family that's going through the program. So it's a great message here. You've heard the stories of clergy that promote the book, and ask, their parishioners and the followers to actually pick up this book and live the principles that are in the book. I mean, they apply to the non-alcoholic as much as they do to the alcoholic. And I know of people that I've heard state that once they, as alcoholics, went through the program, they took their kids and their wives or their husbands, whatever, but they took them through the program as well. And some of them actually have been able to get their family to read the book and actually live some of those principles. It's rare, but I think it's one of those things that is an important thing. And even now, me as the alcoholic, and I haven't really reached out to my family to say, hey, go through this program. Now, my wife is very involved with me. I have in-laws that are very involved in my recovery. And as you guys know, my father-in-law has actually written a book on alcoholism. And so it's easy to talk to him because he's got an academic kind of approach to it. And so it gives me an extension to what I'm doing. But bottom line, coming back full circle, is that if you get a family, the power, just imagine the power of having an entire family going through the program together. Rob?
Here I like to say, don't tell me, show me. You know, the whole idea is that if they can see a profound change that has happened in the alcoholic, then they're going to want that too. You know, but if we're just going to spout, you know, you got to find God, you got to do this, you got to do that. You know, it's like the alcoholic. Don't tell me. Don't tell me what to do, because I don't like to be told what to do. Show me. Because when I came into the fellowship, what I looked for is the people that seemed to have something that I didn't have. That was a light in their eye and happiness. Miserable, you know, there were miserable people in the fellowship. And I thought, you know what, if that is sobriety, I don't want it. Because I don't want to be miserable. I want to be happy. I want to be joyous. I want to be free. I want to enjoy life. Those are the people that I gravitated towards. What did they do in order to have that type of life? That's what I wanted. So I always come back to the idea that, you know, don't tell me, show me. So if you and your husband find a solution for the pressing problem of drink, you are, of course, going to be very happy. But all problems will not be solved at once. Seed has started to sprout in the new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is as it should be.
Yeah, we're all still human. We're all still imperfect, and we're all going to continue to be imperfect. So I think that really all this is doing is just reminding us that this isn't the answer to everything. It's an answer to the ability and strength and approach to life, but we don't have that kind of control in order to make our lives perfect. So it's just as a reminder here that not everything is going to get solved by this. I would argue that most things are going to be easier to deal with, and you're going to find better results. But I would tell you that you're still going to have things that are not going to go your way, and you're going to have things that happen that are out of your control. And you're also going to have things that are in your control that you're still not going to get right. So it's just a quick reminder here that not everything is going to be perfect, which is always important to remind people, because I think we get a little bit of the rose-colored glasses, and especially the newcomer that is just starting out. We've all seen it, that over exuberance, that enthusiasm, and you know that there's really some temperance that needs to occur in order to get this person to really, understand the program. But I know that I experienced it with a young man at one point, that he was just elated that he had found this and was ready to go out and do all this stuff. Well, he wasn't really ready. He wasn't even near being at that point. And that's been, a couple of years now. And that young man right now is in rehab. I mean, he's just still trying to get his arms around his own alcoholism and addiction. But he's working on it. So the good news is that he's very familiar with the program. He will freely come to me. And at the same time, he's also still struggling. So, not everything's going to be perfect. Not everything is going to get solved. And it's just a reminder of that. Rob?
The faith and sincerity of both you and your husband will be put to the test. These workouts should be regarded as part of your education, for thus you will be learning to live. You will make mistakes, but if you are in earnest, they will not drag you down. Instead, you will capitalize on them. A better way of life will emerge when they are overcome.
Yeah, and kind of think of this as that this paragraph is kind of the step 11 in that where we are in the process here, that evaluation, that asking God for what's the direction on how to approach your day in the morning, and then that review and reconciliation that happens in the evening, and trying to kind of correct some wrongs and find a better direction. And then that age-old question is, what is the next right thing to do? And I think that this is going to be what they call the workouts. Okay, it's easy to kind of apply step 11 because that's the action step that is constant in all of this. So just to kind of give it a tie back to the program of where we are, I wrote out to the side that this is kind of a step 11 experience. Rob?
Some of the snags you will encounter are irritation, hurt feelings, and resentments. Your husband will sometimes be unreasonable, and you will want to criticize. Starting from a speck on the domestic horizon, great thunderclouds of dispute may gather. These family dissensions are very dangerous, especially to your husband. Often you must carry the burden of avoiding them or keeping them under control. Never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. We do not mean that you have to agree with your husband whenever there is an honest difference of opinion. Just be careful not to disagree in a resentful or critical spirit.
And I think the other message here, and I want to make sure that it's made, is that if the elephant is in the room, deal with it. Okay. Don't just try and sweep it under the carpet. So what they're saying here is not so much to avoid conflict. It's just learn how to maturely approach conflict and deal with it in such a way that is more positive than negative. I think that that's really what they want to say here. Now, you can come at it in a negative manner, and you would be resorting to the more fight or flight kind of approach to it. And you're going to find that this is not going to get you far. In fact, it's probably going to do more harm than good. So, and we are all human, but if you recognize it and can correct it as quickly as possible, I think you'll find that you're going to be better off. And then if you can actually approach it, because that's the idea here is that we're being open and honest and we're trying to get things after them head on. You do it in a positive way as best you can. I mean, let's not make it, utopia here in that we're going to be perfect at dealing with these conflicts, because emotions are involved. And when emotions are involved, we kind of get that our brains don't click exactly right. And we often will say or do something that we really didn't mean to, or we regret, but just try your best. And I think if you're actually trying your best, you're going to find that you're going to be in a much more beneficial situation than not. So, Rob, on 118.
Okay, yeah, we're going there, but I just want to say on page 64, it said resentment is the #1 offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. So, and I also want to point out that on page 25, it talked about the simple kit of spiritual tools that are laid at our feet. Now, those simple tools are how the alcoholic can deal with problems. And one of the most important tools that I have learned in this program is on page 118, and we're coming up to it right now. So I hope everybody is listening. Page 118, right at the top. You and your husband will find that you can dispose of serious problems easier than you can the trivial ones. Next time you and he have a heated discussion, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either to smile and say, "This is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later." If your husband is trying to live on a spiritual basis, he will also be doing everything in his power to avoid disagreement or contention.
Easier said than done. Again, I'm talking about emotion and the human portion of this. It's hard. I know that both in a conflict like this have to be accepting of the other person's position, in the sense that if in fact one of them says, "I need a break, let's take a few minutes, let's take a half hour," whatever it might be, that the other person has to be willing to put down their sword and shield and say, "Okay, truce for a period of time. Let's come back to it after we've kind of calmed down a little bit." Again, easier said than done. I'm just saying this from a reality standpoint. It works a lot of times, but it normally is one that the other person is still very charged up, and you want to make sure that your part is being said and your emotions are being felt, etc. You want to make sure that there is a mutual respect. I think if you at least address conflicts with mutual respect, you can't help but come out of it better on the other side, even if there are a few things that are said that are regrettable as far as that's concerned. So anyway, that's kind of where we are here. in the process. And I think we're getting ready to address some of the things that Rob wanted to address here.
Well, here is where we practice to pause. We are getting into a position where, we're gonna, we try to avoid retaliation or argument. Okay, it doesn't do us any good to dig our heels in and argue with people, because once we dig our heels in, nobody wins. No matter how great an argument you make or a point you make for your way of thinking, I've dug my heels in and I'm not going to change, my point of view, because I've dug my heels in. I can't. So I practice to pause. Okay, let me take a break and let's revisit this. Okay, and I always tell people the same thing happens when people ask you to do something. You don't have to say yes. We're people pleasers. We don't have to say yes at this moment. Let me get back to you on that. Let me check with my wife. Let me check my schedule. It gives us an opportunity to change, to not always say yes. I am great at being a people pleaser. I will say yes to anybody. You know what? I ended up driving somebody to Bracebridge because I couldn't say no. Bracebridge, for crying out loud. We're talking an hour and a half away. People pleasing. But if I had thought of the tools that I've learned, pause. Let me get back to you on that. Then it gives me a chance to think about it. Do I have the time to do this? Do I really want to do this? Is this God's will or my will? It gives us a chance to process the information without always saying yes. And then what happens is we regret the answer we gave. We get a resentment for it, and nobody wins. So practice to pause. It is, as I say, one of the greatest tools that I've learned in this fellowship, in this program. Practice to pause. So sorry, I whenever the pause is mentioned in the book, or whenever I think about it, it is a great tool for us people pleasers. Your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. He wants to make good, yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Show him these things in yourself, and they will be reflected back to you from him. Live and let live is the rule. If you both show a willingness to remedy your own defects, there will be little need to criticize each other.
I highlighted that very first sentence. Your alcoholic knows that they owe you more than sobriety, and it couldn't be any more truer said in that regard with the important people in your life. I can't tell you how much I want to flip a switch and make everything okay all at once. I can't tell you how many times I've become impatient because I wanted to do the right thing. I wanted to erase the wrong thing, and I wanted everything to be better immediately, right then and there. I'll refer back to the 2-week wonder, the one that says, I've been sober for 2 weeks. You must forgive me for all of my transgressions. Well, once you mature into it, some of that impatience doesn't go away. I know that for a fact that there is still some hurt. There is still wounds that are healing. And I want nothing more than to ultimately be able to just get that behind us. It may never happen, but I'm trying. So I know for a fact that I owe my family much more than just being sober. And there is so much more than being sober. Remember that this is beyond the alcohol. The alcohol is but a symptom. So you absolutely want to make good. Everybody wants to make good. The patience, tolerance, understanding, and love. If I'm being given that, I want to give it back. If I'm getting a lot of negative emotion, if I'm getting a lot of, finger pointing and, all of this is your fault and with the operative word all, kind of thing, I tend to want to retaliate. I tend to want to push back, and none of that is positive. It's all kind of negative. So I can't say enough about how important this is, and to get this patience, tolerance, understanding, and love, I try to give it. I'm not always good at it, and certainly I stumble a lot, but if I give it, then there is a good chance I'll get it back. But you cannot go into it with a selfish idea that I'm giving this, so now I'm demanding it come back. You have to let people be who they are and do their thing. But if you do it long enough, if you do it often enough, then people can't help but give you something back that's of a more positive nature. And I think that it's just more, that's the important thing to be able to kind of get here. So yeah, we're asking the spouse, the other person, to give this at this point in time, but I think it's just as important to make this message. The alcoholic should also be giving this, and at the same time, if both are doing it, well, you can only imagine how good it is. And I just want to come back to what Rob is saying about the pause. It's so important to be able to do that artfully and skillfully. And it's one of my favorite things that Rob talks about, and he does it better than anybody that I know with regard to talking about the pause. So very, very important. It can make or break a discussion and a relationship. I can promise you that. Rob?
Okay, and Leo, thanks for mentioning the patience, tolerance, understanding, and love. I say that constantly during the day, and I'm talking from the alcoholic point of view. I know they're talking to the wives, but from the alcoholic point of view, people don't mean to cut us off in traffic. They don't mean to butt in front of us in line or run over our toe with the shopping cart. So we have to have patience, tolerance, understanding, and love. People are getting in their own heads, and they're in their own little worlds at times, and it's not personal. We just happen to be there. So patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. It helps us to reset. What would God have me be in this situation? Let it go. All it's going to do, I can be miserable all day long if I want, or I can decide that right now, over and done with. I'm moving on. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. We women carry with us a picture of the ideal man, the sort of chap we would like our husbands to be. It is the most natural thing in the world. Once his liquor problem is solved, to feel that he will now measure up to that cherished version. The chances are he will not, for, like yourself, he is just beginning his development. Be patient.
Well, I certainly would say that my wife has never referred to me as the old chap, but I will say that that is a great thing to kind of think about. I think the operative sentence in this whole paragraph is the very last one. Be patient. All right. That is the underlying message here. It is one that, you can have that idealistic vision and thing that you want your husband to be. Contributing to that by participating in a supportive way is certainly the way to go. But the alcoholic has to do a lot of work, and I think the operatives, like I said, the sentence here that really has to come out of this paragraph is just be patient, and that goes both ways, as you guys have heard me speak of before in my own recovery. Just be patient. Good things are coming. The fact that you're not drinking already is an exponential growth in the right direction, and the improvement in so many different ways is there. But there's still a lot of ground to cover and a lot of paths to take in order to get to that more positive relationship that you're looking for. So be patient. Rob?
Another feeling we are very likely to entertain is one of resentment. That love and loyalty could not cure our husbands of alcoholism. We do not like the thought that the contents of a book or the work of another alcoholic has accomplished in a few weeks that for which we struggled for years. At such moments, we forget that alcoholism is an illness over which we could not possibly have had any power. Your husband will be the first to say it was your devotion and care which brought him to the point where he could have a spiritual experience. Without you, he would have gone to pieces long ago. When resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings. After all, your family is reunited. Alcohol is no longer a problem, and you and your husband are working together towards an undreamed of future.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, things could be worse. I think that's a good way to say at this point. You're feeling things that are going on. You're struggling with a particular issue at that particular moment, and all of a sudden you're forgetting the fact that that alcoholism was an illness and is an illness, that your husband or your spouse is actually recovering. And at least in the situation where you're struggling with, if alcohol is not involved, all of a sudden you can sit back and go, well, you know what? At least there's no alcohol involved right now, and that is a better footing. That's better footing for everybody to be on, because now you're dealing with somebody that is alert, that is, in some manner much more in control of themselves and what they're saying and doing. So I think that that's really kind of the thing to remember, is that when you're struggling, at least you have X, Y, and Z. At least there's, sobriety. At least there's no alcohol. At least there's been some improvement in certain areas of the recovering person, and by extension to yourself. You're a little bit more comfortable. You're a little more calm. You're probably a little more confident as well. And so count those positives towards what you're trying to deal with, and kind of apply them in such a way that you come out of it kind of thinking, okay, I've got to remember that at least we have this, and that is important to remember. And you're on a path. It is a journey, and you're going to never get to that perfect situation, but there are going to be plateaus where you hit that you look back and you can look down as to where you were at that lower place, and you have something to look forward to, and you have something at that moment to actually enjoy in the moment. So I think it's that count your blessings, and realizing that things are going to be okay, or much better than they were. Rob?
And just to jump on that, when resentful thoughts come, try to pause and count your blessings on page 84. Okay. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. So when these things crop up, ask God to remove it at once. Still, another difficulty is that you may become jealous of the attention he bestows on other people, especially alcoholics. You have been starving for his companionship, yet he spends long hours helping other men and their family. You feel he should now be yours. The fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. Sometimes he will be so interested that he becomes really neglectful. Your house is filled with strangers. You may not like some of them. You get stirred up about their troubles, but not at all about yours. It will do little good if you point that out and urge more attention for yourself. We find it a real mistake to dampen his enthusiasm for alcohol's work. You should join in his efforts as much as you possibly can. We suggest that you direct some of your thoughts to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. They need the counsel of love of a woman who has gone through what you have.
Yeah, from a personal experience, I can say that the fact that I should be working with other people to maintain my own sobriety, I think that just the simple fact of talking with somebody that's an alcoholic is important. But at the same time, doing a big book study or working with somebody individually, I think has been the highlight of my recovery. And I'll admit, there have been times where I've got to go. I want to go to a meeting, and I need to go to a meeting. It's one that I've been going to, and the family gets a little weary of it. They want to watch a program on TV or something like that. They want some us time, and yet here I am saying I've got to go to this meeting. And there is a little bit of them getting tired of it. I don't know what besides work and study, etc., where I have spent so many hours and so much of my time devoted to a particular program or topic as I have with this program of recovery. And at least in recent history, as far as I'm concerned, I can tell you that this is by far what I spend most of my time doing now, aside from work, as far as an activity. Over my lifetime, no, clearly drinking would have been, way up there, and some of that negative behavior and everything. But that's not what we're talking about now. What we're talking about is the individual that's recovering, that has found community, a connection, and they have found benefit from working with other alcoholics, people that understand you completely, people that listen to you without contempt. They are on equal footing, and they are accepting, and they are understanding of your situation. And we all have different situations, but they're all related. And that feels good. It feels good to us. If you have a spouse that's a non-alcoholic, my wife, for example, is not an alcoholic. In fact, when I started my journey of not drinking, she put down the drink as well, just walked away from it. Completely blows me away that she was able to do it so easily and without resentment. She doesn't come back at me and go, well, I'm not drinking and I, it's your fault kind of thing. She doesn't use it as a weapon. But I'm just still to this day amazed that she was able to just stop drinking, just stop. And there have been times where in the past, where I know that she's enjoyed a particular drink under a certain situation or kind of deal, and she still doesn't drink. And I'm just like, man, and honestly, there's some mild jealousy.
Yeah.
But if I sit back and I look at it, and I've been given a gift. I'm not sitting there watching my other half drinking in front of me, and I'm not feeling drawn to it. I'm not being taunted by it. That was, of anything that she could have done in the very beginning, it was probably one of the best things that she could have done. Now, the flip side is she keeps my feet held to the fire. There is no question that her type of love for me is not necessarily a very soothing, easy, kind of approach. There are moments where she will put me in my place. And at first I think, what are you doing? Why are you on me so much? But it's just because she cares as much as she does. And sometimes I need to have, a certain kink jerked in a certain part of my body. And that's okay. I have to sit back and I have to realize it is for what it is. And it is because she cares so much. But message here, every once in a while, she'll look at me and she'll kind of go, do you really have to go to that meeting? And I'm like, I really kind of do. And she goes, I know, just forget what I said. And I go, but I can tell that sometimes she's feeling that being left out. And now I'll also tell you that she's been lately encouraging me to expand what I'm doing and to find more sponsees as far as that goes. So there is some level of support that she's giving me and or latitude that she's giving me to actually spend even more time with the program and helping me. So it's specific to the person, it's specific to the relationship and the people that are out there. But I think if the alcoholic recognizes that there has been probably a lack of attention given to the other person, I think if they sit down and try and talk through it, use the book, they can probably get some understanding and patience. You know, it grows a bit of patience that may not have been there before. And sometimes people just need to be acknowledged. All they need is for you to stop for a moment, look them in the eye, tell them you love them, and tell them thank you for all of the support and the effort that they have put into your recovery, and sticking it out and staying with, you know, those type of things. Sometimes that's all it takes. It's not a matter of, it's a quality, not necessarily a quantity. Rob?
Well stated, Leo. Now let's bring Bill into it. Let's get his thoughts.
Yep, absolutely. We will stop there today. Thank you very much, Rob.
Hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey.
Hey,
Thanks
Bill.
a lot, Leo and Rob. Did a real good job with this. This chapter here, Two Wives, I mean, as we know, it was written by Bill Wilson. And basically, what I think he's doing, he's giving us his experience on what helped him stay sober and what got him drunk again. So he's basically trying to give some kind of instructions or suggestions to the wife or anybody who's dealing with an alcoholic. You can use a lot of these instructions for sponsoring somebody. He told us on page 15, be on guard not to embarrass or harm your husband. That's a spiritual principle. You know, we're supposed to be considerate of other people. So don't embarrass the alcoholic any more than he did himself. That's basically what he's saying. And on the next page, he says, be careful not to be resentful about the last time he did so. He's telling us that we have to, as the family or the wife of the alcoholic or the spouse, not to be resentful with the alcoholic. And you can use 4, 10, or 11 to get rid of your resentments. You know, like Rob read in step 10, it says, when these crop up, we ask God at once to remove them. Or even if you don't get them right away, you can do it in your nightly review. When you do step 11, you can look at your resentments. Or if you're not up that far yet, you can use step 4 and use all the instructions in step 4 to keep from getting the resentment and keep the resentment from taking hold. And he's basically telling us on page 117, it says, go along with your husband if you possibly can. That in step 10, they give us a step 10 code. Love and tolerance of others is our code. So we're supposed to be, he's telling the spouse of the alcoholic to go along with their spouse if they possibly can. In other words, show love and tolerance for the person. That has a better chance of helping somebody stay sober than trying to fight with them. I know from my own experience, anytime anybody fought with me about my drinking and told me I wasn't allowed to drink, I mean, as far as I was concerned, that's going to make me drink twice as much. I'll show you. What do you mean I can't drink? Watch this. You know, that's what we do as alcoholics. And also on page 117, it says, you will make mistakes. In step 10, it says, continue to set right any new mistakes. So basically what Bill did in this chapter and the next few chapters, he snuck 10, 11, and 12 in here all over the place without us even knowing it. He's showing us how to practice these principles in all our affairs. And this works for both sides. It works for the spouse of the alcoholic and the alcoholic. We're both supposed to be doing these things. I mean, he's got a lot of information here. On page 118, it says patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. Again, in step 10, it said, you know, patience and tolerance of others is our code. So again, he's telling us that we're supposed to use the principles in step 10, 11, and 12. Or we're supposed to live in those because that's what helps us and that's what helps the other person. And then on page 119, he said, the fact is that he should work with other people to maintain his own sobriety. That's a reference to step 12. As an alcoholic, we're supposed to work with other alcoholics Not because that keeps them sober, because that keeps us sober. And then he gives down at the bottom of that paragraph, we suggest that you direct some of your thoughts to the wives of his new alcoholic friends. That's AA's fix for everything. Try to help somebody that's going through what you were going through or what you already got through, and that makes you better, and that helps you from going through it again. That's AA's fix for everything. Help somebody else. Not help me. I'm supposed to help somebody else. That's basically what he's telling us in here. That's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you so much.
All right. So let's go ahead and
Bill.
close with the serenity prayer. It's okay, Della. You're just wanting to get started there, aren't you? And then
Serenity
we'll,
prayer.
We'll open it up. Thanks.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Leo.
Yep, you bet, Rob.